the oracle of the Dalai Lama, Nechung, started coming out with these controversial statements about Dorje Shugden. And that happened somewhere around in 1994 and 1995. That became a precedent for the Dalai Lama to come out with his statements, as I said, on March the 6th and 7th in 1996. This is recollecting the chronology of events. If you look very carefully, the most knowledgeable and the most well-informed people in the Tibetan society, the diasporan society, and even possibly to the extent of those that were also there in the Tibetan autonomous region of China, the generation had passed away. And the road or the way or the channel was completely clear for him. The highway was completely clear for him to go 280 kilometers full speed, full ahead, like in the German highways, full speed, full ahead, to say whatever he felt and whatever he liked about Dorje Shugden. Now, coming back to this thing about you losing your refuge. Now, saying something to people who practice Dorje Shugden, or even if they do not practice Dorje Shugden, to the extent as you have lost your refuge vows, is a terrible and unpleasant and silly thing to say, is a scandalous thing to say, especially if the persons concerned are in robes, have vows, are monk. Like, for example, if you blame or accuse a monk or a nun for having sexual intercourse with either of the opposite sex, or making sexual advances towards others, without really having seen it for oneself, and without really any proof or concrete evidence as such, but merely on the basis of hearsay, you have created a terrible crime from dharmic point of view, a terrible karma. Mind you, as Buddhists, we all believe, or let us say we all accept, that you create a negative cause, the effects can be very terrible. You think it's nothing. I only said something like that in mirth or in joke or in laughter, but you create a very heavy karma. Like, for example, when we take refuge, we are told, not even in mirth or in light joke, should we use the word, I swear by the triple gem. We should never say these kind of things. You probably must be aware, if you have taken refuge, you should know what the refuge commitments and vows are, the things you ought to do and the things you cannot do. So if you know that very clearly, you don't know that, go back and look into the Lamrim at the section of refuge in the small scope. You will see it there. You cannot even in jest and mirth even say, I'm on the triple gem, like Tibetans would say, Kunchosum. You cannot do that. If you cannot do that, and that is such a heavy karma, how can you say to somebody practicing Dharma, when you do not have the omniscience and telepathic clairvoyance to be able to see what is happening to them, you just simply say they do not have refuge? How can you say that? Now, let us say, okay, you are the Dalai Lama, you can say that, you know everything, you are Avalokiteshvara, you have omniscience. If you have omniscience, how is it that you discovered Dorje Shugden to be the greatest harm and evil, or the axis of all evil, only in 1975? You were Avalokiteshvara from your birth. You were Buddha from your birth. The compassion that you talk of, peace and environment that you talk of, we would like to believe is not something you developed here in the West to fascinate Hollywood and the audience over here. We would like to believe that you had all these wonderful traits in Tibet, where there was no civic and there was no hygiene and cleanliness and not even a decent toilet. We would like to believe that you were already planting trees in dry Lhasa, where there was only dust and the smell of urine. Okay? We would like to believe you were planting trees, you were doing water conservation, you were thinking about the environment, and when you came out of Tibet, you just increased it. So the West and people here in the West were so enlightened that they could immediately see your Buddha qualities. I would like to believe it, but unfortunately, there is no precedent and history of you doing so. So, weren't you Buddha and Avalokiteshvara from the very time of your birth? What were you then? Didn't you receive your refuge vows from Tejang Rinpoche? And didn't you receive your Gelong vows or your Bhikshu ordination vows from Ling Rinpoche? At that time, you were practicing Dorje Shugden. You practiced Dorje Shugden until 1974. So, by virtue of your argument, should we constitute that you yourself had no refuge vows because you yourself was practicing Dorje Shugden for at least 40 years. Precisely 40 years. Now he's 80. Now he's 80. So you yourself were practicing Dorje Shugden. Not only were you practicing, you even composed a prayer to Dorje Shugden. You even offered robes to the oracles of Dorje Shugden. You even did that in continuation in India when you settled down first in Dalhousie and then in Dharamsala. You continued. You had many prophecies and prophecies and questions sent to the oracles of Dorje Shugden. You received answer, and even your so-called government in exile did pujas on the advice of the oracles of Dorje Shugden. Not one, not two, but a whole pile of pujas. And you know what Tibetan pujas are like. It takes all day. At least with Catholics and Protestants, it's simple. 1 hour and it's over. And there must be something nice inside the envelope as the offering. Very inspiring. So, you know that for a fact. The Tibetan puja means you just spread your buttock and then that's it. From the morning until late evening. And even then, there's only a short break for pee-pee, but then again it starts. So, he's had all these multifarious rites or rituals performed on the advice of Dorje Shugden. He even composed a prayer calling him Buddha from Ganden. What is Ganden, by the way? Is it the place where Lucifer stays? It's apparently the place where Atisha and Tsongkhapa are, and where the next Buddha is going to come. You have said yourself in your prayer, please come forth from Ganden and from Khechara and from all the heavenly Buddha fields. So, what happened to you then? How were you Buddhist then? You gave vows. You gave novice vows to people. You gave not only vows, you gave even the Kala Chakra initiation in Lhasa. How can you give a Kala Chakra initiation? You should have bodhicitta first. How can you even have bodhicitta if you do not have the refuge vows? Now, if you can follow my rational or my logical way of following this issue in simple language, I'm not trying to attack somebody high up, and I'm not trying to destroy somebody's fair name who is the guru to hundreds and thousands of people. Don't you realize that Shugden following masters are equally and have equally been gurus also to hundreds and thousands of people? Don't you realize that they do not have the support of the CIA and Hollywood, but they are humble practitioners? Don't you realize they don't say something today and do something else tomorrow? They say this is good today. They don't say this is not good tomorrow. What they come with, they stick to it and they remain like that and they complete their lives and they die living Dharma practitioner. The sign of a genuine practitioner is to have a pure conduct outwardly and to develop bodhicitta inwardly and to meditate on the two yogas, the creation and completion stage yoga. So to say, as a good Gelugpa, these humble people who are only trying to do that, you call them fanatical, conservative, Taliban, evil, without vows. How much of bad karma do you create? Now tell me, my dear friends, Dalai Lama, or even if you want to call me Kundeling or Nga Lama, as some of you portray me as, you just tell me, where is the logic over here? Have we heard anything in the Buddhist canons, in the Tripitaka, or even in the Sutra and the Tantras, that the Dalai Lama and Panchen Lama may do rock and roll and disco And as for you, you must be in a strict Roman Catholic school with a very strict behavior, and you cannot even raise a finger. Have you heard anything like this before, that a Dalai Lama or a Panchen Lama can go scot-free, whereas the rest of you must be very strict and must follow, be in line with the Buddhist teachings? In the eye of Yamaraja, I believe, and in the eye of cause and effect, nobody is free, nobody is an exception. We all have to die, we all have to pass the bardo. We have a consequences of what we do. So therefore, this is all I'm trying to say, that all that I was saying right now throughout this time was just trying to show the dumbness or the irrelevance and the lack of logics in this whole accusation and this art of in this whole art of deception. And mind you, it is for you to investigate and see for the facts and truths from lies and dishonesty. It is just for you to discover. Now, thank you very much for listening to me. Now, I would really at this stage like to conclude with the issue or the discussion on the basis of what the accusations being pointed at or being placed at on the deity Dorje Shugden and the followers of Dorje Shugden was all about. I think in a nutshell, this is probably something that might give you an insight or information, and if it hasn't served your purpose, I regret and apologize. Then probably somebody more vocal and more articulate than myself would be able to do that in the future. I hope there is going to be a possibility. But I must come to a conclusion and must put a closure to the chapter of this discussion. Now, incidentally, if you were thinking that the whole issue or the controversy as such has come to an end, then you are probably mistaken. Unfortunately, this does not happen to be the case. You may be aware of the fact that there was a segregation done of the Gelugpa monasteries and the Tibetan civilian communities, in the sense that in the year 2008, the Dalai Lama had finally decreed that a referendum has to be carried out amongst the Gelugpa monasteries, where they should decide whether Shugden followers can remain with them or should be excommunicated, and whether they should share food and religious associations together. In Tibetan, it sounds very meaningful. Choda Sangsingi Dewache. Choda Sangsingi Dewache means you have to cut or sever all connections of Dharma. Means if you have been a guru to Shugden followers, you have to throw them out. Or if you had gurus among Shugden followers, you have to abandon them. This is what it means. This is what it means. Otherwise, how do you segregate? How do you segregate religious connections from Shugden followers? How do you? It basically comes down to that. It is not so complex or not so Tibetan an issue. The whole idea of segregating and not associating with people means when you see them on the streets, not talking to them, boycotting them. Let's put it like that: boycotting them, not talking to them, not associating with them means you don't even sit down and have a cup of tea or coffee. There's no question of cappuccino or espresso. There's no question of sharing their pizza or offering your pizza to them, because if you are a non-Shugden follower, you cannot give your pizza to them. You're breaking your commitment, because you're sharing material goods with them. If they are in difficulty and they are dying, they need water, or they are crying for medicine or medical care, you cannot go and help them. If you tell me you are exaggerating, you are thinking of the Dalai Lama in such horrible ways, you are saying that the Dalai Lama would go out of the way. He is the only navigator of peace and man of compassion alive in this world, and all that he says is only peace and harmony. And you have this crazy mind and you say this is what he means. Well, then I'm going to ask you to kindly explain to me what is the meaning of segregation of material provisions and religious affair. You kindly give me a definition and explanation of that if it is not so. Well, if you have no issue with this, and if you don't think what I'm saying is ridiculous, I'm just going to continue. The segregation of material provisions necessarily means if a Shukden follower is dying, even on his deathbed, needs water or food, or needs medicine, you ought not to go there, because if you go there, you break your samaya or your commitment with the Dalai Lama, because you promised the Dalai Lama that you would not have any material and religious sharing of material or religious provisions with followers of Dorje Shukden. Now, not sharing religious and material provisions with Shukden followers means if you see a Shukden follower passing by on the street, you better run away, or you better say shoo, shoo, shoo to the Shukden follower, because he's a rat. He might be carrying some dangerous disease, a virus or something. So you have to say shoo, shoo, shoo. It's worse than a person infected with AIDS. So you have to say shoo, 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 or either you run away from there. Okay, this is what the Dalai Lama initiated in the year 2008, and on the pretext that the Shukden followers are going and complaining to the government of India, and they have gone to the extent of even having gone to the government of China, and the government of China, who met my advisors and my team of negotiators recently, got a message from the Chinese saying that you talk about world peace, and you talk about harmony, you talk about us Chinese communists as destroying religious freedom, not giving religious freedom, discriminating, persecuting religious beliefs and followers. What about yourself, dear Dalai Lama? What is this whole business of you saying Shukden followers are evil, they are the Taliban, they are associated with us, they get money and support from us, they are murderers, they are killers, they are terrorists, they are narrow-minded, they are sectarian. And you've started this whole thing about not only banning them from the Tibetan society, but even excommunicating them from amongst the Buddhists. What is this thing you are doing? We don't do anything like this in China, but we are rather intrigued. What are you doing? So his negotiators came back with this message and gave it to him, and he got really mad. That was in 2006. In 2007, the External Affairs Ministry of India, Pranab Mukherjee, had made a statement as if it was a continuation. And he said, the Dalai Lama is an honorable guest of the government of India, but he shall not engage in any activities that shall be seen as anti-Chinese. That was a second warning that preceded after what the Chinese had said. And then just barely 2 weeks later, again in the national news channel TV of India, Pranab Mukherjee was saying that nobody, no individuals shall create disharmony or engage in activities that harm Indo-China relationship. If they do so, they shall be met firmly with. Well, if you're asking me, but this statement must be referring to Indians, I will tell you, not so, my dear friend, because we don't have Indians protesting outside the Chinese embassy in New Delhi or even in Bombay in the Chinese consulate, not even the one which is being newly opened in Calcutta. We don't have any Indians. If by chance there are Indians, they are the Indians following the Tibetans from Dharamsala and elsewhere in the refugee communities. At their behest, these Indians come out, but that is a handful. The majority of Indians have no big issue with the Chinese. If they ever had it, it was during the 62 era and during the time when the normalization of the relationships had not taken place. But now it's only an issue of competition with the Chinese. That's it. And about friendship and economical improvement and business. That's what the world is about. That's what Indian-Chinese relationship is about. So therefore, that statement was not made to any Indian VIP or outstanding personality. It was made to the Dalai Lama. Not only that, in the year 2007 itself, again, the External Affairs Ministry, as if that much was not enough, had sent a letter to the Shugden Society at that time from his ministry, signed by him, saying that I am disturbed to hear about the segregation and the problems you had faced during the ban put on you, that 12 monks were expelled. Where are they? What is their situation right now? A short letter. After that, there was another letter again, just which came immediately 3 weeks later and was sent to the chief minister of our state of Karnataka by the same External Affairs Ministry of India, in which he had addressed the minister by saying to him, the Shugden followers are under your jurisdiction. There has been problems in the Ganden monastery in the year 1996 where 12 monks have been expelled. Should you carefully look into the case and study and see if they need any assistance or help. So, this came to the notice of the Dalai Lama. So, as I told you, the Chinese put a bomb under his butt. The Indians put another 2 explosions under his butt. And he gained this impression and perception, which is a valid perception, of course, to some extent, that Shugden followers are becoming now very powerful. They are saying something and the Indian government is listening to them. They are saying something and even the Chinese government is listening to them. Now they are trying to show their muscle to me. I'm going to teach them a lesson. And so therefore, bang, in the year 2008, he came with this idea of segregation. Now, if you don't believe me, if you think this is my exaggeration or this is my interpretation, it is not like that. He was very compassionate. He thought that Shugden followers should stay separately and his followers should stay separately. So both will have samaya and stay with peace, because this is what he says when he comes here in Europe, when he comes to our parliaments and when he comes to the European Union. So this is the same thing he has been saying to you. No, you are going too far away. Then please look at his speech. The transcript of his speech, which is made available by his own government and which is undertitled also. Look at that yourself. You will find that for a fact that he became so angry that people were listening to the Shugden followers. Why should he be angry? Shouldn't he be proud of the fact that his own Tibetan subjects and people who don't want to be segregated from him, who are not saying we won't live under your leadership, all they are saying is, please give us the freedom to practice. Please give us the freedom to practice. We will live like before. We will worship and we will praise you. We will listen to everything you say. But just give us the peace of mind to be able to follow our samaya and commitment, because we took commitments and vows and initiations from our masters. Shugden is not about a silly Tibetan monk sitting on a lion with a sword and with a heart in his hand, a ferocious god. Shugden is not about that. We are not attracted by that alone itself. It makes no sense. Shugden is about a purity of lineage. And now if I come to a conclusion, Shugden is not only about protecting the Gelugpas, it is also about protecting the Nyingmapas. It's also about protecting the Sakyapas, Kagyupa, Gelugpas, and Chonangpas, and even the Bompos, the non-Buddhists. Who says so? Who says so? Well, if you look at Sakya Kunga Lodro, the 17th century master, great Sakya Pandita, Sakya master, who was considered to be an emanation of Guru Padma Sambhava himself, he has written it in his ritual of restoration and fulfillment rite, which is called Kang So. Kang is fulfillment. So is restoration. The restoration and fulfillment rite written by Kunlo is something we still follow. This was not created by Bhabonka or even his grandfather. This was created by the Sakyapas. Who praises Dorje Shugden to be world peace protector? I would say Sachen Kunlo himself has said that. And Ganchen Rinpoche has taken cue from it. He is called him the protector of all the traditions in Tibet and the teachings of the Buddha himself. If you look at Nebesky's work, which was written somewhere around 1918, between 1918 and 21, somewhere far away in that era and time, under the guidance of Dhandor Rinpoche, a very great Gelugpa Lama of Loseling Tsawa house. And Chime Rinzing Rinpoche, another very famous Nyingmapa Lama, who actually visited Pabongka, the great Pabongka in Tibet. I'm not talking about the two later incarnations. I'm talking about the great Pabongka in Tibet, who went to see Pabongka Rinpoche in his very hermitage in Labrang, because when he was living in his own region, he heard from his Nyingmapa colleagues that Pabongka is a horrible man. He destroyed, he broke into pieces an image of Guru Padma Sambhava, and he threw it into the well, and he told people, you better stop saying Oma Guru Vajradhara Dara Padma Siddhi Hum Hum. You better not say that, it's useless. You better say Miksema, and don't keep Guru Padma Sambhava images. This kind of a rumor was rife at that time in that part of Tibet. So this Chime Rinzing Rinpoche is a knowledgeable and a very funny and a very lovable person, good Lama, it's a very nice Lama. He used to be great friends with Lama Ganchen. He came to Tibet he came to Lhasa, and the first thing he did was to go to Pabongka Rinpoche's residence, his retreat house, Tashi Choling, to see what was happening. It so happened that he arrived on the day of the 10th of the Tsog day. The first thing he arrived, and the first thing he saw on the shrine of Pabongka Rinpoche was a golden image of Guru Padma Sambhava right on the extreme right. On the extreme right. A golden image the size of a handspan. And he saw them, performing the Tsog section, So all that in combination made him get the impression that this is absolutely not true about what my Nyingmapa colleagues have been telling me all these years. Look at this great Lama. He's performing a Tsog, Ghana Chakra to Guru Rinpoche. Well, that was not to Guru Rinpoche necessarily. It must have been a Vajra Yogini Ghana Chakra. It must have been a Hiruga Ghana Chakra. It must have been Guru Puja itself. Well, Guru Puja is not just about one individual Guru. I said that even down there. It's about all Gurus. If you say, my root Guru is special, all others are second class, you are a fool. You don't understand the meaning of Guru. If you recognize it only in one person, you call Lama Supremo or my root Guru, and all the others are second hand, you have not understood Guru Puja. A root Guru, the perception of a root Guru is something else. Is not for saying this is my private property, or this is my best man, or this is my best hero, or things like that, my superman, and the rest are my standby people. All Gurus are equally important, and Guru Puja is referred to all Gurus. I am saying this because, why not? Guru Puja is being offered to Guru Sumati Munindra Vajradhara, Lamalo Santuan Doje Chang. Yeah, but in a sense it's being offered to all one's Guru. So, of course it's being offered to Guru Padma Sambhava. But that master had this very unique way of seeing it as if it was being offered only to Guru Rinpoche. That was what we would say in Tibetan, his pure vision, Tanang, Korangi Tanang we would say, his pure vision. But the fact is clear. He got a clear impression that Pabongka Rinpoche, far from being sectarian, is actually somebody who relies on Guru Rinpoche. This is the point. So therefore what I'm trying to say over here is that Chime Rinzing Rinpoche, Thando Rinpoche, these were the people who were the crew and team who worked with René, Novisky, this Greek anthropologist and writer who went and researched on Dorje Shugden. If you look there, the information comes from both these Nyingma Lamas and this very erudite Gelugpa Lama. Nobody is talking about Dorje Shugden in this way. Rather, they are talking about a prophecy when Dorje Shugden becomes actually the protector of all of Tibet. So where comes the question that he is only a protector of the Gelugpas? You call him a spirit, that's your freedom. You like to call him a spirit, you look at him like that. We don't look at him as a spirit. Now, what I want to say is that, because I've gone a little bit off track, is that what has happened right now is a segregation. The same that happened before the climax of the Second World War coming. Before the segregation and the persecution of the Jews that took place with Hitler encouraging his Reich police and his special guards to go and attack them to arrest them for no good reason whatsoever, to force them to wear David's star, and then eventually put them into what you call concentration camps. Now, I'm saying that if this was a Tibet, the Shangri-La, that most daydreamers here in Europe and America would like to see, and would like to see lamas more with butter tea and with dresses smeared with samba rather than walking with an iPad and an iPhone and a computer MacBook. They would rather prefer to see monks walking with a prayer wheel and a rosary, and see these very ancient castle-like and trumpets and clarinets and all these blowing, and everybody going on a yak very slowly. No Ferrari, no Mercedes Benz, nothing of that sort. This is what many people here, Shangri-La lovers or Tibetophiles would like to see a Tibet like, So if we would be in that kind of a Tibet, we would be the first in line to be crucified, and I would probably be made the first Saint Peter. That's a joke. That's a joke. So that's just putting it in a lighter vein. It's just a lighter vein. What I want to say is that the unfortunate fact or reality is that there is a segregation. There is a segregation. And there is a crass discrimination in the sense that the Tibetan society has now been made into two. Those who believe in Dorje Shugden and those who do not believe in Dorje Shugden. There can't be a middle path. Likewise, the supposed Prime Minister of the Tibetans recently, in answer to questions from the TCV, Tibetan Children's Village School, TCV, in answer to their questions and to their doubts and concern about the relationship between Tibetans and Shugden followers at large, in answer to that, whether there was going to be a possibility of a middle way and a negotiation and a reconciliation between two parties, to that Samdong Rinpoche is supposed to have said, such possibilities do not exist. The decision has been made. It is for them to take recourse to follow the advice of the Dalai Lama. If they do not, there is no place for them in Tibetan society. This is clear. We do not wish to associate with them. They would be better off not associating with us. There is a tendency also by the so-called incumbent Lobsang Sangye, who calls himself and is the designated so-called Prime Minister of the Tibetans, and people within the Tibetan administration, telling the world and elsewhere, everywhere, that there has been no discrimination, there has been no segregation, they are being given their IDs, they are being given their yellow books, they are being given their travel documents. We make no discrimination. Now, in answer to that, I have been saying that recently there is no country in this world, even the most fascist or the most backward or the most medieval or even a country that runs on the basis of a system of theocracy. There is not a single country that says, with regards to its citizens, that we have provided IDs and we have provided railway passes and we have provided them with passports and given them the right and freedom to travel all over the world. Even communist China doesn't say that with their own citizens. Even if it's a communist rule, and even if people tend to say they rule with an iron fist and iron hand, even they do not say that. How do they dare to say things like they provide facilities of conveniences like this? The fact is, Shugden followers have been expelled from schools, from government offices. They had a recent so-called election, which was an eyewash, because only those who are docile and accede to psychophancy of the Tibetan leadership are allowed to run for the Prime Minister's post. But a very articulate and a very knowledgeable person and someone with a vision for democracy, a gentleman called Lukharjam, who recently was also within the voting candidature for the Prime Minister, was expelled from the elections and disqualified. It was said that he didn't qualify for for the post of the Prime Minister. Why? Because he is not speaking strongly against Dorje Shugden followers. He is not condemning Dorje Shugden followers. He is not calling them communist Chinese agents. He is not calling them Taliban. He is not calling them, what you call hedonists or non-believers. He's not using any of those crazy vocabularies of etiquettes to Shugden followers. He's not saying that. This is the only reason why he was chucked out of the candidateship for the Prime Minister. So much to say for the so-called Tibetan democracy. This is the so-called Tibetan democracy that exists today. Therefore, in this atmosphere and under these circumstances, for these people, including the Tibetan leadership, to come out here in the West and say that Shugden followers are lying. They have been given all the opportunity. Look, they are living in the Tibetan settlements with their newly built monastery. They do their pujas, they do their rituals, they carry on with their study. There is nobody to disturb them. This is not something which is a blessing or any provision provided by the Dalai Lama, his government, or his stooges. This is rather the democratic constitution and the freedom of expression and right available in India as a reason why Shugden followers have not been expelled from the settlements. Because in 2008, as the Dalai Lama instituted the segregation, he tried a hundred many different ways in having the Tibetan monks act on his behalf to have Shugden followers completely expelled from the settlements. He did not succeed in that. The only reason he did not succeed in that is because the Indian authorities concerned were not willing to do so. They said, we have people of all religion living in every town and every village together. Should the Hindus and Muslims riot tomorrow, we are not going to segregate them merely because they engaged in arson and rioting, and so therefore the only solution would be to segregate. We will never do that, because all communities, all religions, and all people of different nationalities and races and beliefs have to live together. This is India. This is a democracy. Now, this was clearly told to them, and this is the only reason, therefore, that our followers of Shugden within the two big monastic seats survive, but they are vulnerable to even further attack, because as you can see from the way the narrative has gone until now, there is this lurking danger. Because they are naive, they do not have the vocal capacity, they do not know the political system, they do not know the intrigues of the Tibetan administration and its leadership, they do not have a lobby, they do not have a voice, they do not have a spokesperson. So therefore, these people, the Tibetan administration and its leadership, think they can do anything they like, anytime they like. Well, they keep on trying, but until now they have not succeeded. So this does not mean that the Tibetan administration has provided them their equal rights and position in Tibetan society. This only means because they are living within the Indian constitution and Indian soil, even though they are not Indian citizens. Now, with this, I would like to stop for today and would thank you all for listening very patiently. And until the next time, goodbye.